Alright guys, welcome back to Golden Gift Qualifier number 1. We've got game 2 here between Shadowfax as the Blue Trunks Thor player on the lower side of the map, up against Dobr on the top side of the map as the Red Trunks Zeus player, and we're here today on Watering Hole. So players have a fairly safe second town center, although it is in range of siege ships. The third town center is plonked right in the middle of this semi-island area. So this sort of acts like a wall off against you, really, in trying to hold it off. I mean, once you're actually on it and you've walled up on the front, it does come to be advantageous, but you first really got to establish a foothold in the center of the map, and then that puts you quite close to your opponent. So as these civs in particular as well, I think you'll often try and bully your opponent out of potentially even establishing any foothold in that area early on in the game. As opposed to that last game where, with Dobr on Egypt on his Ra, sorry, he's up on this side, he's on Greeks this time, was able to play a nice, slower, passive, fast, heroic game, which Egypt really tends to bloom well in. So I expect this time on the Greeks he's looking to play a bit more of an aggressive strategy, while Shadowfax will also be looking to try and hit his opponent hard and maybe not make the mistakes of last game. Try and get a bit more damage off early on. Set himself up to be able to deal the killing blow rather than potentially fizzling out in the late game. Conversely, if he focuses on a more aggressive strategy, he might not actually slip behind on the macro. Not saying that he can't macro, because I'm sure his macro is great. It's just more that Dobr was able to take some fights across the map really well against him, and even do a little bit of rock dropping and harassment. Having his opponent chase him around the map, trying to get chariots. Saw some pretty impressive use of Chimera Shadowfax last game though. Surprising to see Dobr actually survive the onslaught, losing probably close to 100 villages. So we might be in for a tad shorter game this time. So I have to see what our players have up their sleeves, whether Dobr's going to get off to a solid start and potentially inflict more damage with that Greek opening than his opponent was able to the last game. Whether Shadowfax throwing some Norse into the mix will be able to take things back in this series. Thor especially getting to skip, having to make an ox cart there. Nice saving though. This gold won't last forever, but it does mean you get going really quickly. Although, well, and I suppose with the pig sticker upgrade, you sort of do get the increased gather speed of your huntables that Odin would also benefit from straight out of the gate. It's just that obviously you've got to spend a bit of time making a bunch of dwarves.
Helpwin.
And he's unfortunately too short of a movie at the moment. Dobr hasn't actually opted to bring back any of these pigs, but I think he was worried that Shadowfax was going to try and do exactly this and try and wall that choke off early. It'd be really easy for Dobr to then, Shadowfax to then snatch those up, so this way Shadowfax actually got to scout these bloody things later on, and it could potentially mess with his ability to really reap the benefit of herdables at all early if he's inclined to, or if he potentially gets pushed back off the hunt. So it's probably a good idea that Dobr just leaves these guys parked here, even though he's got possession of them, because where will he go to? Like, short of going for a dock and getting a transport ship, it's really not worth moving these guys at all. His opponent, really, what he's best off probably doing is maybe leaving one there, putting one here, putting one here, and putting one here. Because in that way he's got tabs on the golds and on all the hunt, but that'd probably be the only reason you'd want to move those herdables at this stage. Now that, you know, he's left it too late to try and evacuate them with his own scout. And now there's, you know, Herseer and villagers all around. So Dobr, that's enough about talking about herdables in the middle of Age 2, the most active age, until very late game. So Dobr getting a forward town centre here might be going to be a big advantage here. It's really going to force Shadowfax into trying to get one of his town centres at some point. So bolt power being used there on the Valkyrie, so good choice. Using it early as well. So it's really minimised the damage that she could actually do, the value she can really get for Shadowfax. So Shadowfax at the moment, just trying to chase that Minotaur. Keeping tabs here because you'll be able to see that military academy. Not going to want to actually stick around to get knocked back by the Minotaur because it will just about one-shot these guys. But at the same time, if you can block with the raiding cav, it stops the Minotaur from running outside of the Herseer attack range. But ultimately, Dobr's just decided to sacrifice him and try and get some splash damage on those Herseer from the town centre. Gonna go for range and barracks there, or military academy I should say. So Dobr gonna start walling himself in. Shadowfax is going to go for a town centre, so it is a little bit more expensive for a Norse player than it is for the other Sibs, but bearing in mind you do actually build it with infantry, not with villagers, so you're not actually spending as such the building time, which you could be spending on gathering. You know, it's really only costing fighting opportunity with your infantry, but generally, well, in a lot of matchups at this stage, you're obviously probably going to want to transition back to raiding cav after your initial Herseer and or Ulfsark harass, and then back onto it. This will just momentarily hold up some wood gathering. Although it hasn't quite caught on to the whole forest, so this... oh, there we go. It's now caught on to the rest of it. I was going to say, if it had only burnt that patch, that'd be pretty shitty. But there we go, it's destroying a lot of the potential wood eco of the Greek player. And as well, this is a bit of an uphill battle here for Dobr. He hasn't sort of got the critical mass of units for his, you know, for Toxin Spears to be taking this fight for now. Though with a hero in tow in Jason, they are going to want to either back off or try and interrupt the villagers, but that surround by the villagers is actually more than enough to try and melee them down at the cost of a little bit of gathering time, and none of the villagers falling in the process. So all in all, I think that was a nice catch there by Dobr. It was a bit rough that that wall-off wasn't finished. So now Shadowfax trading, I don't think he's quite got the value that he wanted. It was going well here when he was singling out those individual units, but then once he got surrounded at that temple, he ended up really losing enough raiders to sort of make it not worth his while, because even all these guys are quite low, and going for the god power path that he has, he doesn't have access to the healing spring, so he's not going to be able to top up his cavalry. Oh, actually, he has built another Valkyrie, so he will be able to top them up, but I mean, it is an expense. He does have the favor to to burn, because he's generating it from his heroes, but at the same time, still 200 food. And I mean, she is quite a strong unit into everything other than the hero. She'll fare much better than raiders will against hoplites. Shadowfax is just trying to prevent a little bit of scouting being done by Dobr at the moment as well. Yeah, he is trying to top up what he can in the army there. Greek player trying to take the fight under his town centre in a nice concave there, potentially going to be able to use the villagers in the fight as well. But he's also going to be a little bit worried to not have them tank too much and all die there, so Dobr's actually going to go for the water buffalo over this side. Not going to take one of the ones over here because it'd die about here. Just keeps everything a little bit safer. But it does mean Shadowfax has the opportunity to try and snake his way in on the other side here, and now the villager's going to get caught away from the army, but in saying that, it's short-lived. He's not leading with the throwing axeman. Now he is going to lead with the throwing axeman and try and snipe the vills. So he gets one of them, backs out before he's going to lose anything here, so some nice micro. They're just taking a little bit off Dobr. He's a little bit down in terms of the score here. There's a couple more low villagers there. So Dobr trying to force Shadowfax to only engage with half the army here. So you can actually have these villagers try and fight the raiders. So with his use of restoration, Greek player going to be able to push a Norse player back. Now he's going to have to go back on the food because he hasn't got a lot of it in the bank. His main source of food at the moment, he's not really gathering from over here at the right side at all, which could be to his detriment here because he's having to try and select between taking the fight with the villagers and having them come back on the water buffalo, and he's lost a couple of them, even though I think ultimately they have led to the fight going his way. He's lost a bit of eco for his troubles. Shadowfax having uninterrupted, 2 town centre economy behind this. Now Dobr extending perhaps a bit too far forward here. Throwing axeman. Gonna be able to clean up a lot of those hoplites. Yeah. Gonna back off. Now he really doesn't have access to healing. I mean, our Norse player is gonna have to build Valkyries to get healing, but I don't believe our Greek player has any at all. And that's Skraling. Is that the starting Ulfsark for the Norse player if it's still called Skraling? And it's got the different coloured hat to his cloak, when normally the hat and the cloak are the same colour because it's all part of the one wolf skin. The more you know. He hasn't made any more Ulfsarks, so I don't know. It's the annoying thing. Shadowfax, make some Ulfsarks, please. Oh, I suppose he wants throwing axemen so he can fight well against the throwing axemen, as well as at least these guys can engage Toxotes at range, even though other infantry can tank them better. At least they can fight back slightly faster. Poor old dwarf getting picked on by the lion. It's a heroic age Skadi here. Oops. The Shadowfax, so he's got access to that Frost God power. He could do a number of things with that. You can freeze your opponent's army and kill it, or you can actually freeze it and focus down eco or structures. You can even freeze eco should the opportunity present itself and your opponent, tries to engage you, in his base somewhere. But Frost being used underneath the fortress. And these guys should be right to clean this up. I mean, the throwing axemen, it's a tough trade for them against Toxotes, but, and thank you for the follow, it's a tough trade against Toxotes, but when they outnumber you so heavily, and there's backup, and there's Huskarl transition, so it's looking really rough for Dobr here at the moment, and you can't just ceasefire to get his way out of this. He's already used his restoration as well. I mean, these guys are really, really tanky while they are frozen. So Frost Giant Frost won't give you the bonus armor that being frozen by Frost will. By the God Power Frost, sorry. But it does tend to mean that the fight tends to not go as badly as you think it will. Although it is still rough and you will still bleed a couple of units. I do wonder if Dobr might have been, so Shadowfax might have been even best off trying to harass that hunt a little bit more because there was all those villagers on it. As I saw a game, I think it might have been by AC the Great, where he used Frost to take down a town centre. Like he froze an army and then just beelined the TC down. And then he turned on the army once Frost was over. Personally, I think that's a smarter way to use the tech. I mean, the God Power. But I understand that not every situation presents it. Sometimes you can use Frost to, yeah, really win a fight you otherwise wouldn't, or even just evacuate. And then look at raiding, like against vills, not necessarily sieging structures, but just hitting gold mines and trying to hit small clumps of reinforcing units is another big one. If you can sort of stop your opponent from regathering his army while yours is sort of still deathbally enough to be a pain in the ass to deal with, or mobile enough to be a pain in the ass to deal with, you can really lock your opponent up. Oh, and it looks like Shadowfax walling off his far side, but Dobr has done no such thing just yet. So while he's gone to his third town centre and Shadowfax is working on getting his too, it's going to mean that these guys, they're actually going to do a quick check to see if there's a market or any hunt gathering. I mean, at this stage you're probably not going to be doing hunt gathering, but you always can, because it's going to save you that little bit of wood. So I think, funnily enough, at lower elos you'll actually see people exhaust every hunt on the map. It's more of a top level thing to not do it and just sit safely on the farms. Just because it's a risk versus reward thing, I think. As well, these guys are under threat. At least they're close to a town centre. If you're over here, you've got to have a tower to really protect the villages, or you know, then wall it off. So, got an engagement. Dobr pushing out. He's got access to the Hydra, so these guys are going to be having strong siege capability, and the bronze is going to be a nice armor buff for Dobr's units. But I don't think he's actually got a huge amount of population and a huge amount of human units out. So I'm not sure if that's been the best use of the technology here. I mean, of the God Power here. In fact, I think he's sort of whiffed his bronze tech there. He used it slightly too late or slightly too early. Didn't really have the human infantry count that he was, the human unit count, sorry, that he was looking for. And so Shadowfax, he gets Myth Age, pops his Fimbulwinter, and from there, Dobr taps out of game number 2 and locked up at 1-1 in this series, guys.